Hi, my name is Julie Emerson. This presentation is called Motivating a Multicultural and Cross-Cultural Workforce. During this presentation, we will be looking at an overview of employee motivation, evidence-based incentives, analysis of employee motivation, and some strategies that leaders can employ to motivate employees, and then some final thoughts. And there will be references after the conclusion. In this first section, we will do an overview of what employee motivation is. Scandura describes motivation as the process whereby the leader inspires and creates excitement to energize the employee to take action, and then directs that action towards certain goals, and then embarks on sustaining the desired behaviors. This is done through consistent actions and then feedback to the employee, and continues in a cycle. There are many motivational theories. We're going to look at 3 content theories, and content theories are theories that talk about what motivates people. Maslow's hierarchy of needs is probably the most well-known. It is one that is used extensively in psychology and healthcare, and we use it a lot in nursing. This particular theory talks about the need for people to have their basic needs met, and then after that they have needs on a hierarchical scale that need to be met before they can get needs met that are further up. So for example, a person's basic needs, like the need for food, the need for shelter, those needs have to be met before any other need in their life can be met. So their search for love cannot happen until they have something to eat and a place to sleep. Their self-actualization cannot happen until not only they have a food to eat and a place to sleep, but they have safety and they have some type of love and belonging in their life, and their self-esteem needs have been met. So that's what that means. There is an actual hierarchy, and again, it's a very good descriptor of what motivates people, and that's why it's used so commonly. One of the next ones is Hertzberg's motivation hygiene theory, and this is where there are 2 factors involved. There are motivators and hygiene factors, and the motivators are the things that increase motivation because of enrichment and positive characteristics, and the hygiene factors are the things that detract and actually cause dissatisfaction, and they work against one another, the idea being that the leader would focus on the motivators, and thereby it would counteract and overcome the dissatisfiers. The third one on here is McClelland's 3 needs theory, and in the 3 needs theory, McClelland talks about the need for achievement, power, and affiliation, that these are 3 basic human needs, and that these are the things that motivate people to perform. the need to achieve, the need for power, and the need to fit in or have affiliation with something positive. On this slide, we're going to talk about two different process theories, and process theories are theories about how a person would be motivated. So the first one is the equity theory, and equity theory talks about that people want to be treated fairly and a perception of fairness in terms of inputs and outputs. So if an employee is giving a certain amount of effort into their work or their job, they are expecting a certain amount of output that they receive as a result of that input that they're expending, that effort they're expending. And the expectancy theory talks about met versus unmet expectations. The idea is that when you put forth effort and you perform well, you expect a certain level of rewards for that effort and performance. And so that's what expectancy theory is about. Okay, next we're going to look at some evidence-based incentives. So here's some evidence-based incentives that are proven by the literature. Faminal and Skindura talk about goal setting, and we're going to discuss that a little bit later in the slideshow, so I'm not going to overly go into it now. Another is feedback, and that's leader giving. These are leaders giving feedback to employees. Another would be redesigning work to motivate. There's an idea that work in and of itself can motivate employees, and the work setting or the work flow or the pleasantness or the importance of the work can actually be a motivator in and of itself. We've touched a little bit on equity and fairness, and we're going to go into that a little bit more. And later in the slideshow, we're going to spend more time on organizational justice and social justice. So there are some other evidence-based incentives as well. One of them is organizational behavior modification. Behavior modification can be used in other areas, and it talks about the idea of reinforcement. Reinforcement could be positive or negative. And so the idea behind behavior modification is that there is a behavior, whether it's a desired behavior or an undesired behavior, there is a behavior, and there's an antecedent, and that is something that causes or triggers that behavior. And then after the behavior, there's something called a consequence, what happens after the behavior, whether the behavior is positive or negative. None of these words, antecedent, behavior, or consequence, are positive or negative. The consequence is the thing that happens after. And the idea behind this is that if you want to change the behavior, you have to either change the antecedent, or more commonly, you also have to change the consequence. Sometimes negative behaviors are actually being reinforced. And so I'll just leave that thought with you and move forward to this next one. The next one that's evidence-based is performance management. Most of us have undergo this every 6 months to a year with our own leaders. Performance management is, your leader sits you down and you have a little packet of tasks that are part of your job requirement, and you get rated, 1 to 5, 5 being the best or outstanding, and 1 being the worst. 3 is satisfactory, and they rate you on the different skills and tasks that you perform at your job. And the idea behind that is to modify your behavior at work. And then another evidence-based incentive is money. It is not the only one. It is an external or extrinsic incentive, but money is a motivator, and we'll talk about some other ideas regarding that. Okay, in this section we're going to discuss employee motivation analysis. So there are some things to consider regarding employee motivation, workplace motivation. Employees are unique individuals, and the reality is that not everything is going to motivate an employee the same way, and maybe not the same way even in their lifetime. There might be things that at a certain age group might motivate them more than in another age group. So things to consider as a leader is that on your team you have a number of individual people who are not motivated by the same things. So the idea is to have a well-rounded organization that offers many different avenues of motivation that would entice someone to want to work there and to want to do a good job. So we touched briefly on intrinsic versus extrinsic motivators. Intrinsic motivators are the things that motivate a person from within. It's self-motivation that comes from within a person. And then the extrinsic motivators are the motivators that are come from outside the person, like we talked about pay. So extrinsic motivators are not sustainable long term. They work, but they're not the only thing that work. They have limitations. Long-term employee motivation has to be intrinsic. It has to come from within inside the person, where they are motivated from an internal source to do a good job and to want to work. One of the newer ideas that's come out is the idea of social justice. We've been discussing this probably for a few years now. Social justice is a term that encompasses the idea of fairness and equality towards everyone. It has the idea of people need to be treated the same. There's not a first class versus a second class citizen. And there's an idea of social justice in the workplace. Pham et al. Has a paper where they discuss social exchange theory, the idea that leaders set the tone. They invest in their employees through servant leadership and value their employees. They value retention as a social responsibility. And as a result, in social exchange theory, the employee will then value the organization and promote the organization's goals and be loyal to the organization. So in this next section, we're going to talk about strategies for employee motivation. So while leaders might not be able to all redesign their workspace, and they might not all be able to, or redesign work, they may not all be able to affect the pay of their employees. They may not have the power to do that, but there are some things that leaders can all do in their roles, and that's these three things here. So goal setting. There is a concept called SMART goal setting. SMART goals are goals that are specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-based. We touched briefly on performance management and feedback, and that's something that all leaders can do, and all leaders can invest in their employees through mentorship. And I wanted to discuss these three things here because these are things that can be done on a regular interval. The goal setting, the feedback and performance management, and the mentorship can all be done, even if it's all together at the same time. These items can be touched upon by every leader in an organization. So to wrap up, we've talked about sources of motivation, motivation theories, employee incentives, special considerations, and social justice, and some motivational strategies for all leaders. Um, Employee motivation is a really good tool in the toolbox for a leader to have, and it will help to improve the team. And motivating employees is an essential leadership skill that will create value for the entire organization. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video, and I hope that you have enjoyed it.